Hi everyone. We're going to talk about the question cycle. Now this is a tool that we're going to use for the entire semester, from the reading assignments we have, discussion boards, as well as our larger projects that we have this semester. So I want you to think about this as a tool to use whenever you're reading something and you're trying to think critically about what you're reading, but also when you're starting to build a composition, whether that's a piece of writing, a video, discussion board post, or anything that you're turning in for this class or any other class that helps you thoroughly think about the topic and also question each aspect of that topic that you're writing about. So first, we want to think about the 5 steps in this cycle as a way to kind of think about not just what we're reading, but how we're reading it and how we're processing that information. And when we're creating something of our own, how do we start with some topic, something that we're interested in, and keep going through that process? So we start with any phenomenon, and I'll talk about what I mean by phenomenon in a second. Then we start with an initial question. That initial question drives what we're going to be talking about. The answer to that question is something that helps us build the entire set of information that we're reading, or that helps us build the set of information that we're creating. After that, we ask follow-up questions about that answer. Once we've asked all the follow-up questions, and this process is something that can go on and on and on in our topic. So follow-up questions are exceedingly important because they can be something that we cycle back through constantly. So we can keep going back to that initial answer we had and ask more questions. Finally, we want to think about how we apply that back to the original phenomenon and the original question we asked. This is a way that we can verify, but also check that we're being very well connected in our answers to these ideas and in our analysis. So now, let's think about specifically that phenomenon. With a phenomenon, it's what we start to question. So it can literally be anything. It can start with an idea, a vocabulary word or concept, an image or a video, a person, a fact, an emotion or a reaction, or an experience. So take, for example, in our reading, if we're looking for new words or phrases, we want to think about the things that stick out to us. And that could be something that makes us wobble. Now, this idea of wobble comes from a scholar and a researcher named Bob Feccio. And Bob Feccio noticed that his students had the best results when they paid attention to the things that made them curious, when they kind of went, huh? Or something didn't sit right, or they wanted to challenge something, or they didn't know anything about what was being presented to them. So this wobble is anytime that your brain pauses and goes, what is that? What does that mean? How does that work? So pay attention to those moments. And that could be a phenomenon that you pick up on in your reading assignments, but also in your writing and composition assignments. Now, we want to think about that next part, the question. What is it we want to know? We have to kind of think about those ideas, those concepts, those things that are being presented to us, whether it's reading or writing, and think about what it is that we don't know, or that we want to know, or that we want to challenge. So asking that initial question is something that actually directs and guides what we're going to be doing. So it's really an important step in this whole process of inquiry and analysis. So what question you ask and how you ask the question actually determines your analysis of a text or the way you'll write about something. So when we're asking an initial question, so for example, if we were to look at deep fakes, an initial question might be, what is a deep fake? And that means we'd be defining what a deep fake is. Or we might ask a question, where are deep fakes used? So that's then building a context about the places and spaces where we interact with deepfakes. We might ask the question, who makes deepfakes? And then we're going to be talking about the people. We might ask something more historical, like when did deepfakes start? So this could actually give us some information about the motivation of not just who makes them, but how do we interact with them? So it changes the dynamic of what we're going to answer here. We also might ask why or how questions, but why are deepfakes important to know about? Because how it affects us. But also the how questions are how they're made. So that looks at the technology, that looks at the ways that people engage in these things and what's the kind of background for that actual process. So you see, the answers become very different, and what you write about or what you analyze becomes very different based on the kind of question you ask. Now, it's very simple, similar to that process of the follow-up questions as well. So the answers to each of those questions, you might come up with several different themes, different ideas. So it's kind of important to think about how you can go back and continue to ask questions and build more and more information based on that original answer you had. And then the answers to each of those follow-up questions become the connections that you make. They become the details and the analysis that you need to present or you need to understand about this particular topic. So as we go back to that analytical answer, this helps you then find and build themes to your analysis of a text or a topic. Think of it as a way of determining a purpose in something you're reading, or figuring out what your thesis will be in your own composition. Now, let's go back to those follow-up questions for a second. With follow-up questions, we want to then think about what's related to the answer that we developed in that first initial research question. So that research question up here gave us an analytical answer that might be, something very straightforward and simple. But what we want to do is we want to get into the details. We want to get more complex with those follow-up questions. Now, this is our way to dig into the details. So the more questions we ask, the more details we're able to express, or the more details we're able to flesh out of a reading. The why and how questions work really well in this step because those are the ones that help us look at deeper motivations, they help us look at purpose, they help us look at why a writer might be trying to express something the way that they are. And it also helps you think about maybe hidden or unaddressed information in a reading or a source or a given topic. So what are the things that aren't being presented could also be a good way to ask a follow-up question. And then that follow-up question becomes, okay, so why don't they talk about it? Now, last but not least, we want to talk about that application to topic. Now, this is a really important step because it's a way for you to go back and verify the information that you've been questioning and providing answers to. So this application helps you check your own ideas. Have you found out enough information from the reading? Or do you need to go to more sources to figure this out? It makes you think about your line of questioning as well. If you're not able to see a direct connection to answering your original question, so that initial question that we asked, if it doesn't connect, if it's not something that's related, especially if this is you writing, you can take that out of your writing. So a lot of students, they worry about being off topic or unclear. So this helps you kind of think about whether or not this is actually connected to that first initial question and the thesis that you're trying to present. It also makes you think about the transitions and connections that you're making for your actual topic. So this is something where if you've gotten feedback in the past from teachers or professors that says there's no connection to your main idea or these ideas are not connected, this gives you a way to say, okay, how does this connect? How does this connect? Do each of my ideas and the answers to each of my questions connect one to another? It also helps you find gaps or unrelated information. Now, when I talk about a gap, what this means is that maybe there's something you missed when you originally built your follow-up questions, especially. And this helps you find ways of connecting those things together because you have to deeply question and put it back to the original idea. Now, in building our question cycle, this is something that at first it seems very scary, but the more we practice it, the easier it's going to become, and the less you'll have to actually think about the structure, and the more of a habit it will become for you in your reading and writing work.